Hi, I'm Jacob. That's weird. It's weird. How am I supposed to say that without sounding weird? I don't like talking about myself. Hi, I'm Jacob Laster. No, that's weird because I said I paused. There was a weird pause. I was born in Fort Benning, Georgia. I grew up in Georgia for most of my life and moved to Arkansas when I was 14 or 15, and then finished high school in a little town called Lone Oak, Arkansas. Population of like 2,500. At first I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's disease, which is a form of lymphatic cancer. And then through some flow cytometry, they found out that it was T-cell lymphoma, which is the more rare kind. When I was diagnosed with that, at first they said it was bad, but not like as bad. So they put me through the initial two weeks of chemo for that. And then at the end of that 2 weeks, I got diagnosed with ALL, which is a form of leukemia, which was also T-cell, which is the rarer form of leukemia. When they diagnosed me with the leukemia, it was everywhere except for in my spinal cord. So they basically said it was profuse. I had, I don't remember how many masses. I had one in my neck that they took out that was the size of a softball. So it was like here. And then I had a bigger one that was a little bit smaller than like a grapefruit in between my spine and my esophagus that was pushing on like one of the major whatevers that come off your heart, like arteries. It was a mediastinal tumor. And when they diagnosed me with ALL, they gave me 2 weeks. I think at the time I was 18. I joined the Army when I was 17. And because I was so young, I didn't have an advance directive or a will or anything. So the day sort of went, I passed out on a ruck march, and I woke up in troop medical treatment, which is just like the little hospitals they have for soldiers. And they said my white blood cell count was, I think it was 280,000. And the normal range for white blood cells is between 5 to 10,000. So they flew me from troop to Martin Army, or they put me in an ambulance and it took me to Martin Army Community Hospital, which is the major hospital in Fort Benning. Did a bunch of scans, told me my right lung was collapsed, and that they were going to fly me to Columbus Regional Medical Treatment Center, which was the cancer treatment center that's in Georgia. So they put me on a helicopter and flew me there and did a bunch more scans and came back and told me that I had the lymphoma. And they told me how aggressive it was, and they gave me the initial prognosis then, which was not great. They told me 2 weeks, and I was in the ICU. And I remember the hematologist, there was 3 people that came in, because at the time I was registered as a Buddhist, because a bunch of people were. And 3 people came into the ICU room. It was a hematologist, an oncologist, and a monk. And they came in and told me that I needed to write an advance directive in case like complications came from the treatment. And, I didn't have anybody there with me at the time because I hadn't even told my parents. So I needed to write an advance directive, and then at the same time I needed to write a will, even though I didn't have anything. So I was 18. They just told me I had 2 weeks to live, and I had to write all this stuff. And it was like, as soon as I finished writing it all, 2 nurses came in, and they had to pull fluid off my lung and do a bone marrow biopsy, which was the first one I had. So they rolled me over on my left side, and they did the bone marrow biopsy. And like one of the nurses was sitting in front of me with her like hands on my hips, and the other one was behind me like shoving this needle in my back. And they did that, and that was the most painful thing I had gone through at the time. And then I sat up on the edge of the bed and sort of like hugged my knees, and they stuck a needle in between my ribs to go into the pleural space of my lung to pull the fluid off. And they pulled 2.5 liters of fluid off my right lung. I have a picture of it too, and it's this like big brown bag. It looks like murky mud water.
And that came from your lung?
Yeah, it came from the space around my lung. So they pulled all that off, and then everyone left, and the room was really quiet and weird. And then my company commander at the time came in and sat down, and which is like my boss's boss. But he came in and sat down and asked me if I told my parents yet, and I said no. And he asked me if I was going to tell them, and I was like, I guess I have to, but I don't know when. So he ended up calling my mom, and then I took the phone from him. And I remember my mom said she was driving to like the base in Little Rock for some reason. I don't remember why. And she had to pull over on the side of the road, and she didn't believe it, and she was in denial, and I could hear her crying and everything. And then I couldn't tell my dad. I didn't have the heart to tell him, so she had to tell him. And then I found out that he immediately got on his motorcycle, because he was in Arkansas and I was in Georgia. He immediately got on his motorcycle and drove down, which was a 9-hour drive from Little Rock to Georgia, that night, because he was at my bedside the next morning when I woke up. So it was like, told my mom on Thursday, woke up Friday morning, he was there. Yeah, I remember seeing him by my bed in the morning when I woke up, and he was crying, which was hard to see because that was like the first time I'd ever seen my dad cry. He stayed there for a couple days, and then he left, and then my mom and sister showed up, and it was the same thing. I was still in the ICU, so the walls are like, the outside walls of the ICU are just glass. It's just clear, and then they have curtains, and I had the curtains pulled back. And I remember seeing my mom and sister walk down the hallway, and they saw me and then started crying and turned around and walked away, I guess, to like compose themselves. And then they came in, and this was all like in the span of like 2 or 3 days. But they started chemo the same day, because I wasn't a match for bone marrow. So they wanted to do a bone marrow transplant, but I didn't have a match. So they just decided they were going to put me on this protocol called the Dana-Farber protocol, which is like a super long, I think normal treatment plans for lymphoma is between like 3 to 6 months. And this was a 3-year protocol. So they put me on this super aggressive chemo to try to get the cancer under control. And then 2 weeks later, they sort of had the lymphoma under control, and then they diagnosed me with ALL, which is the leukemia, which like made the prognosis even worse. And then they had to treat it even more aggressive. And then probably 2 weeks after that, they gave me a mega dose of this drug called methotrexate. Methotrexate is an anti-cancer drug, but it's also an anti-rheumatic, so they use it for rheumatoid arthritis. And like a normal dose for rheumatoid arthritis is like 5 milligrams a day or something. And they gave me 4,000 milligrams over 24 hours, which is surely way beyond the level that would have killed me. But they gave me that over 24 hours. And I remember waking up towards the end of that 24 hours, and I had a PICC line in my arm, which is just like a peripheral line they put in your arm that goes straight to your heart so they don't mess your veins up with all the chemo and stuff. And I was so confused from the chemo, I didn't know where I was. I was just sitting on the edge of the bed, and I remember convincing myself that this was all somehow my fault. And I looked down, and I didn't know why this thing was in my arm, or where I was, or what all these bags were, or like what anything was. So I just like grabbed the PICC line at my arm and like ripped it out, and there was just like blood and chemo going everywhere. And I remember grabbing the IV pole and like slamming it on the ground and like limping over to the door, and I'm just like I'm like blood's pouring out of my arm. And I like opened the door, and it was like 3 or 4 in the morning, so it was still dark in the hallway because they don't turn the lights on until like 6. And I just remember stumbling down the hallway, screaming at the top of my lungs for help because I was so confused. I didn't know what was going on. And like I remember seeing people like open their doors, and like people's family looking out at me walking down the hallway. And it was just like the weirdest, most surreal feeling, like being so lost. It was like I couldn't control myself. Like I didn't have control of my body. My body was just like taking over and asking for help. And then I passed out from blood loss, I'm assuming. And I woke up back in the bed, and they told me they had to give me a bunch of blood. My mom was there, and she was crying and freaking out. So that was the beginning of like the downward turn of treatment, because treatment had been pretty easy up until that point. Like I lost my hair and I was getting sick, but there was no like real bad things that happened up until that point. And then I went through something because of that like high dose of methotrexate. I went through something called tumor lysis syndrome, where the chemo is killing so many cancer cells in your body. Like you have to get rid of them, and most of the dead cancer cells come out through like poop or pee, and there's just so many that it blocks up your kidneys. So I went through tumor lysis syndrome like that same week. My kidneys started failing, so they came in and told me that my kidneys were failing, and that they were going to try to do everything they could to flush them out. And they just gave me a bunch of like saline fluid. They were giving me like a liter of saline an hour. And I remember that morning before they came in, I had this little bottle next to my bed that they made me pee in, because I couldn't pee in the toilet because my pee was so like contaminated. I don't want to say radioactive, but it had so many like chemotherapeutic drugs in it that it was toxic. So they had to process my pee separate to everyone else's. And I remember thinking about that, and like that's kind of wild. Like I had to poop in a special toilet, and I had to pee in little like containers. But I remember that morning I woke up and I peed in the bottle, and it was like, it looked like Kool-Aid that had too much Kool-Aid powder in it. Like it was like thick red. It was like way more red than I would have thought bloody pee would have looked like. So I remember doing that, and then I was like, oh, okay, the doctor's going to come talk to me about something probably. And then they came in and told me about my kidneys. But that ended up working. They gave me a bunch of fluid and flushed my kidneys, and my kidneys started working again. And then at this point, I think I'd been in the hospital for 6 weeks. I hadn't gone outside. I hadn't smelled outside air. I was just confined to this one room. And then I woke up one morning. I had really bad night sweats from the chemo too. So I was used to waking up in the middle of the night feeling super sweaty. But one morning I woke up, it was like 3 or 4 again. And I remember feeling super sweaty, and I was like, oh, that sucks, because I couldn't ever sleep through it. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just like go to the bathroom and wipe myself off and splash my face with cold water and then try to go back to sleep. And I went in the bathroom, and then when I wiped my face, I like remember feeling it. And I was like, this doesn't really feel like sweat. And I like turned on the lights and looked in the mirror, and I was just like hemorrhaging because my platelets were so low. So I was like bleeding from my pores and from the corners of my eyes and my nose and my ears. Like I was just bleeding. And I like remember opening my mouth, and like my tongue was just red with blood, and there was like blood in my mouth instead of spit. And I saw that, and then started seeing stars, and then fell on the bathroom floor, and then woke up and then found out that they had to give me a bunch of platelets because my like platelet count was super in the trash because of all the chemo and stuff. So that was like the second thing that happened that was super shitty and bad.
What was the so what was that process of you're told you have 2 weeks to then like, okay, now you're on your 3rd week.
Yeah.
Now you're on your 4th week.
When they initially told me 2 weeks, it was because I didn't have a bone marrow match. And then I remember I can't remember if it was my hematologist or my oncologist at the time. So my hematologist was Dr. Kathleen Holst, and then my oncologist was Dr. David Pulowski. One of them, I don't remember which one, I think it was Dr. Pulowski's, because I asked him what stage it was. And he wouldn't talk about staging or like prognosis, and I think Dr. Holst is the one that told me 2 weeks. And yeah, they gave me the 2 weeks because I didn't have a bone marrow match, and then Dr. Pulowski said that he was going to do everything he could to try to make me beat this, or not even. I don't even think he said try. I think he said we're gonna make you beat this or something like that. And then after the 2 weeks initially, he told me not to get my hopes up because there can be like a period where it appears that the cancer is responding very well to the treatment, and then there's a latency period, and then it stops responding and then gets worse again. So he told me to keep my expectations reasonable. But yeah, it was just like every day was its own thing. You make it past the initial 2 weeks, and then there really was no like, oh, you're good now. You can like the 2 weeks is gone. You can live forever. It was just like, you made it past 2 weeks. Good job. But like,
Yeah.
could be any day.
Right.
Because it was all contingent on the fact that it hadn't spread to my spinal cord yet. So I had like tumors on my liver, my kidneys, my lungs, my heart, my spleen, like intestines, like it was in my lymph nodes in my neck and my arms. It was everywhere. And they said if it had gotten into my spine, that's usually when it's like there's nothing really they can do. But they were being prophylactic, like they were trying to treat in advance. So they also were doing spinal taps, and I would lay on my stomach in the bed. They would do a spinal tap. They would stick a needle in my spine and pull out CSF. They would pull out spinal fluid, mix it with chemo, and then put it back. So they were putting chemo in my spinal cord to try to like make sure that if there were any cancer cells in there, they would kill them. But there wasn't like any like extension of life after the 2 weeks. They just said 2 weeks, and then like,
We'll go from here.
yeah, basically,
Yeah.
like we'll just go from there.
Do you remember like what you were thinking? Like as an 18-year-old, 17-year-old, like I can't imagine what I would think if someone tells me that you gotta write a will.
I was in denial I remember thinking about this. I was in denial until I left the hospital after the 9 weeks. Even going through like the chemo and then like seeing all the blood and like passing out and having like the blood tests and seeing the proof, I was convinced that I had like a really bad flu until I left the hospital. And then I remember walking out because I still remember that day. It was like September the 13th or something in Georgia. All the trees were orange. I had a like little band on still, and I walked down to my mom's truck that was in front of the hospital, and I could look up to the 7th floor and see the hospital room that I was in. And then I remember looking up, and then that's sort of when I admitted it to myself. I was like, oh, I actually have cancer. So it's like I was in denial. I was like writing it all because they told me to write it, but I didn't write it like actually thinking about it, because I had to rewrite my advance directive afterwards because I didn't put anything in there that I actually like believe or want to happen. Like now I have in my advance directive, like if I'm in a state where there is no likelihood of recovery, like I don't want to be on life support. Like I don't want anything keeping me alive if I'm not present. And I didn't have that in there initially. So yeah, I was just doing what they said to do because they said to do it. I didn't really think about it. I didn't really think it was real. It all just seemed like a weird miscommunication.
Right. So how long did it end up being, like all your treatment from start to finish?
From start to finish, I think it was 3.5 years. Okay. So it was 9 weeks initially in the hospital, and then after that 9 weeks, they had the lymphoma and the leukemia under control, and then they sent me back to Arkansas to finish out the rest of the 3 years of outpatient.
When did you hit that mark where doctors were like, you're good? Like it's uphill or downhill from here?
I'd say probably 2 years in, because there were so many times when like the chemo was just so hard, because it's like people die from cancer that go through chemo, but more often than not it's the chemo that kills you. So there were so many times when, you know, I had complications from the chemo, or I would get like a flu that would normally be bad for most people, but it almost killed me. So it took a long time. Probably when they stopped, I was on so many different drugs that had like, some of them were worse than the others and some were not as bad. Like I was on one drug called asparaginase, which I didn't know at the time that it was like super bad. So there's like the ones that everyone knows. It's like Rituxan, like Red Death, and you know all that. But I was on asparaginase and vincristine, and vincristine's known to give you blood clots. I think asparaginase is too. I'll combine that with the fact that I was super bedridden and I like was too nauseous to get up and walk around and everything. And I think at the time I weighed like 45, or I was like between 45 and 50 kilos. So I was just getting like complications all the time. I had 3 blood clots in this leg and 3 in the right and 2 in the left, or 3 in the left, 2 in the right, from those drugs. So it was like every time my oncologist, Dr. Malwani, would say something positive, the next week I was like, oh, I got a blood clot. And then it's like, you know, the week after that I was like, oh, I took too much Coumadin, I'm bleeding everywhere now.
So it's like one thing, it would fix one thing, and then it came with...
Yeah, it came with like so many other problems, yeah. And then it was like, I would go get a bone marrow biopsy, and then because my platelets were so low and I was stupid and hard-headed, I wouldn't rest long enough because I wanted to be normal. So I was going out and hanging out with my car friends in Arkansas at the time. So I would get a bone marrow biopsy, and you're supposed to like rest for the rest of the day at least so that the incision will close up and everything. But I would just go and hang out with my friends and like work on cars, and I'd be like bent over the engine bay of a car and then just feel like blood running down the back of my leg. Like the incision would just open and I would start bleeding. So it was like a lot of the stuff I was doing to myself, and then some of it was just complications of the actual chemo. But yeah, my oncologist was very, like Dr. Malwani was very neutral. She never said anything super good. She was never like, oh, treatment's going great. It was always just like, see you next week. So I remember the most positive thing she ever said was when I switched, because it was weekly appointments for weekly appointments for a year, and then monthly appointments for 6 months, bi-monthly appointments for 6 months, every 6 months for a year, and then a year for a year. So the total treatment total observation was 5 years, and total treatment was 3 years. The most positive my oncologist ever was when I switched from 3 months to 6 months. Because she was like, if we can trust your body to not self-destruct for 6 months, more likely than not, you're going to be fine. And I was like, okay, that's great. And then she had triplets and then left. She was.
I mean, you were pretty much like, not on a tightrope, but like uncertain for a long time. Like you said, it was almost like week to week, and then once it got from week to week, you went month to month.
Yeah.
So it was just progressively.
Yeah, and there's a weird thing about it when, because it's like it's supposed to be a good thing, and you feel like you're expected to be positive when you go from week to week to once a month, and then every 3 months and every 6 months, and there is like some form of it that makes you feel better. But then there's a lot of uncertainty that comes with that, because you're so used to seeing, like when you're used to seeing your blood work every week, that's like your safety net. Because like ALL is so aggressive, it like you can be fine this week and then right back where you started next week. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of balancing. Like I'm supposed to feel good about this, but also I'm super uncertain. And it was almost harder the longer I went between like actual doctor's appointments than going every week. Mm-hmm. But
so at what point did like weightlifting come into your life?
When I first came back to Arkansas for the initial for the 2.5 or 3 years of inpatient treatment. So my appointments on Friday, I would get to UAMS around 7:00 in the morning on Friday morning. I would get blood work, and then I usually wouldn't leave. Like I would get blood work, the doctor has to look at the blood work, order the chemo has to come from the pharmacy, then you have to go back and then get all the prophylactic medications that they give you, like the Benadryl and like the anti-nausea medicines, and then they give you the chemo, and then I had 3 chemotherapeutic drugs that I had to get that had to be kept separate, so they had to hang bags separately for all of them. And then after that, I had a 4th drug that was a shot that I had to get. So I would go from 7 in the morning to around 7:30 or 8 at night was my Fridays. And there's a lot of empty time to kill, so I would just watch weightlifting videos. I would watch like Cal Strength videos and like the Olympics videos, and like, because that was like the peak of weightlifting.
Did you just stumble on those videos though, or like was weightlifting already kind of a part of your life?
No.
Before like you went to the Army and.
No, I was just on YouTube looking for stuff to watch, and then I was like, oh, that looks cool.
Do you remember the first video or the first couple of videos that piqued your interest and sent you down the weightlifting rabbit hole on YouTube?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think so. I remember the one. I was going back and forth between watching weightlifting videos and just general fitness videos, and I can't remember if this was in the beginning of all of that, but I remember seeing some guy who had lymphoma and then went into bodybuilding, and then that I was like, oh, that's cool because he can do that, and then I went down the rabbit hole of I'm pretty sure it was John North videos. I think it may have actually been John North videos.
Yeah.
Because I think that was around the time that Cal Strength and John North was really big.
Yeah, because we were talking 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So that's 2014.
2013, 2014.
That's around the time of the Cal Strength boom and all those videos. Yeah.
So I think it may have actually been Cal Strength videos.
Yeah. It's crazy how all of us can pretty much have that in common.
Yeah, trace back to Cal Strength videos. Yeah.
The catalyst into going into weightlifting.
Yeah, man. I remember this. I wanted to do weightlifting so bad, but I couldn't because I couldn't be trusted to not just rip my PICC line out after the incident. They put a port, which is they cut your chest open and they stick this little thing under.
You had that, you had something in you at all times.
Yeah, I had they put this port in, and then they connect a catheter to your heart, and then they put a needle on top of it, and then they put this sticky clear tape on top, so it would get accessed on Monday, and then they would just leave it for the week. And then every Monday they would change it out. So because the line ran over my collarbone, I couldn't do any cleans or anything. And I wanted to do weightlifting so bad. I started going to the gym, I think a year after about a year after I was diagnosed, I started going to the gym, but I could only do like squats and then like leg extensions, and I couldn't really like I couldn't do deadlifts because it would roll my like shoulder and it would hurt because I could feel the thing like move, and I couldn't do anything chest because the port was attached to my chest muscles. So if I like flexed it, I could feel the sutures like ripping into the muscle. So I just did the squats, which probably contributed to my imbalance now. But yeah, I want to do weightlifting so bad. The day they took my port out was the first day I got a coach, which was in like 2017, 2018. They took my port out. Same day I called this guy that had a CrossFit gym in Little Rock, and I was like, I want to start weightlifting. Can you coach me? And he said, yes. And he's like, when do you want to start? I was like, today. I remember going and telling him, and I still had like the iodine all over my shoulder from when they like swab you to pull the thing out. He was the worst coach in the world. That dude was trash. Dude, I'm not gonna say his name. I'm not gonna say his name. But if you're from Little Rock and you weightlifted, like if you're one of the 3 people in Little Rock that weightlifted in 2016, 2017, 2018, you know who it is, and he was trash. It was so bad. He would like tell me to do exercises that were just ripped from like Catalyst programs or something, and then sit on his phone the whole time.
So just never coached you.
Yeah, he just never coached. And then
you just like, here, do this.
Even in 2017, the price was ridiculous. I think I was paying like $180.
That's crazy for today.
Yeah, for someone who doesn't coach.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was weightlifting. Weightlifting got me because it was something that I could like drown myself in. And then like when I wasn't watching weightlifting videos when I was at the hospital, I was just imagining that I was weightlifting.
Was there anything about weightlifting, like it being such a physical sport, was there anything about that and like the condition you were in? So from being really sick and weighing 50 kilos, was there anything about weightlifting that was appealing because you were like, I'm so far from that, like I want to achieve that. I want to go from being, 50 kilos to really strong.
I never thought about like the physicality of it. Weightlifting was I never looked at it and was like, oh, I want to get jacked. Mm-hmm. I never even really like thought about it like, oh, I want to get really strong. That came later. It was just like weightlifting looked so nice. It was just nice to look at. I remember watching like track and field, and like throwing seemed so like, I love throwing now. I can appreciate it. But at the time, throwing just seemed like such a simple like barbaric thing. Like you're just like throwing, or even like like pick up a rock, put it on your shoulder. And now I can appreciate like the technique that's behind it and the movement that's associated with it. But weightlifting was there was like a balance of speed, and like it looked pretty. It was pretty to watch when it was done well. It just looks really cool.
You just watch that one slow-mo video.
Dude, I'm trying to. Yeah.
Watch one slow-mo video of weightlifting. You're like, that's pretty.
Yeah, and then there was the later into it. I was still going through chemo, but then there's like all the pictures of the Chinese athletes, like that one picture of Liu with his back. Then I was like, oh, okay, I also want to just get really jacked and strong. Yeah. That came later, but.
Is there anything from your experience going through everything you went through that you apply to life today? Like, how has that shaped who you are? Do you approach training differently? Do you have...
I don't know.
Is that just like something you went through and it's a part of your life, but it's in the past, and so...
I try to convince myself that it was just something in the past, but I know it's always going to have an influence on what I'm doing. I don't know if I think about life different because of it, because I'm like, that's just how I think now. But I think I'm a little bit more resilient to bad times than I would otherwise be. I've gotten better because of that, and just because of general life experience about like not harping so much on bad things in the moment. Like if you've trained around me or trained with me, I complain about like bad phases of training, but I'm not gonna I'll complain about it here, but I'm not gonna go home and then also complain about it at home and then get like mad about it there. I just complain about it in the moment, and then I just sort of move on from it.
It is what it is.
Yeah, because I'm like, well, it's bad today. It could be better tomorrow. Because that was a lot of chemo was like, I wake up today and I'm super sick and today's miserable, but today could be better. And then tomorrow would come and then it could have been better or it could have been worse. But there's like, I've always thought about it in the mindset of, if you're going to suffer, like worrying about it and stressing about possible suffering in the future is only going to make you suffer twice, because you're going to live through it now worrying about it so much, and then if it's negative, if something bad happens, then you have to live through it again for real. But if you don't like harp on what could happen in the future now, then you only have to experience it once. So it's like, I just try to not.
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it.
Yeah, it's like there's no point in going through something twice.
Yeah.
When you have the control to only go through it once. Like, if the bad thing's going to happen, like I remember never letting myself think about the possibility or the eventuality of my death because of the chemo. Like, regardless of how negative, like I never accepted any of the like lifespan diagnosis stuff. I like, when they told me 2 weeks, I didn't like start getting my affairs together and be like, okay, 2 weeks, I'm going to pack it up. I was just like in denial the whole time, which then translated into me like not thinking about it, which can be a bad thing if you avoid like possible bad outcomes, but it can also be a good thing if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. There's no point in like, if it's something that's going to happen for sure, there's even more reason to not think about it and harp on it. Because if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, and you just live now. When it happens, it happens.
Yeah. What are your future goals in life and in weightlifting?
Man, you would think I'd have a better answer for that. In weightlifting, everyone's like, oh, I want to go to the Olympics. And it's like, that's probably not realistic for me, but I would like to make some kind of team. Pan Am's team would be nice, like a Grand Prix team. I'll take any team. I think it'd be cool to be able to represent Team USA, and then to be like, look, like, not anything's not possible, because I feel like that's like a cliche, but it's like, you can go pretty far.
Yeah.
If I can, go from needing 2 nurses to help me walk from the bed to the bathroom for most of 3 years, to making a team that 0.1% of the people that weightlift get to do. Like, you may not be able to do whatever you want to do, but there's a lot that you can do. And I don't know, I feel like, mindset is a lot of cancer treatment. Like, if you keep a positive mindset on it, you can make it through a lot more than you could if you're super negative, and if you give up. And I feel like that'd be, when I was going through chemo, if I would have saw that would have like helped me. It would have like lit a fire under me. So hopefully one day I can be that, like, if some kid comes in and gets diagnosed with cancer that goes to the gym, I want to be that guy that the oncologist is like, well, look, this guy did this while he was still going through chemo. So it's like, you could do that. Yeah.
And you just celebrated 10 years.
10 years, yeah. 10 years since diagnosis, which is like the cure. They say if you make it past 10 years, the incidence of relapse is negligible. So it's the same as like anyone else getting diagnosed with cancer at this point.
So up to this point, you were still getting checked every
every year for the last, I think, two years. Or maybe it was 4 years, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I think it was 4 years every year for 4 years was the last 4 years of the like observational period. Yeah, and 10 years. It was a crazy appointment because it was super underwhelming.
Really?
Yeah. I went back. It was in November, and I went back, and my mom wanted to go to it, obviously, and I brought my girlfriend Nairobi with me. And we went, and we were like spending the week. I was trying to not think about it, so we were like going around looking in Arkansas and like going to the gym back home that took me in and like helped me weightlift and stuff. And and then we went to the hospital and got blood work and sat down with the doctor, who wasn't really my oncologist, but he stepped in when my initial oncologist left because of her children. And he was like, your blood work looks good. Just set up an appointment with your primary care. I was like, That's it. I don't know what I expected, but I expected more than that. Not from him, but just from like
Just the moment.
the moment itself. Because I thought about it. I mean, I've been thinking about this day for the last, or that day for the last 10 years. Like the day when I can like officially say I don't ever have to see another oncologist in my life. And I don't know what I imagined. Like I imagined like he said it, and then I like suddenly had this rush of endorphins, and I felt super good and happy, and everyone high fived. Yeah, and there's like and there's like fireworks going off when we go out and get food, and it was just like,
okay.
yeah, he said that and then left, and then there was this desk that I always had to stop by to make my next appointment, and I remember just walking by it, and I like got to the hallway and turned around. I was like, oh, I don't have to go back and make an appointment for next time because there is no next time.
Yeah.
And then we went downstairs, and there's this thing like the seed of hope where you like put this little metal chip in for your last appointment, and I did that, and I was like, oh, didn't feel anything from that, and then it just sort of made me realize I was just putting way too much weight on it. Like, yeah, it's like part of my life, but it's not my life. It's not my entire life. Yeah, I did cry though leaving. Like walking out, because I also did research at UAMS. It's because I remember going through chemo and I was watching weightlifting and stuff, but I had to walk by there's a building called Biomedical 2 when you walk into the cancer treatment center, and I walk by it all the time. And I was like, I want to know what's going on in there. And then one day the doors were open, and I was going to the hospital by myself, and I just like walked in. And it's like a secure facility, and like you're not supposed to go in there unless you're a researcher and you have labs, and there's like animal labs in there. And I just walked in and like walked around and like looked, and I was like, oh, this is cool, and I left. And then after I graduated from college, I got a job there because I like looked it up and applied only for jobs in those two buildings, in Biomedical 1 and 2, and I got a job there, and I worked there. So it was walking out of that building after my 10th appointment was cathartic in multiple ways, because it was like, 10 years of my life and then 4 years of my life, 4 years at Biomedical 2 and then 10 years at the actual like Winthrop P. Rockefeller Treatment Center. It was like the end of such a large portion of my life. I mean, it wasn't half of my life at that point, but it was like half of my, like the part of my life that mattered. Like, so I did cry a little bit. There was some tears.
Yeah.
There's like manly tears though.
Did you ever get to talk to your first oncologist? I forgot.
No, Dr. Malwani. No, I never did. She was this super nice woman who, when I first came in for my first appointment, my mom was there, and then she didn't believe that I was, or she assumed that my mom was the one with cancer because I was the youngest person she'd ever treated. So that was our first interaction. Was she was like talking about the blood work to my mom and about like everything to my mom, and I was just sitting there like,
You gonna tell me?
I'm like, I'm the one with it. And but she was just like, I'm only saying this because it's relevant. She was a super small woman. She was like maybe 4'10" or like 5 foot on like a good day, and she had triplets.
Wow.
So I don't know if she went back into oncology after that, or if she's just like
Still recovering?
taking some time. But I remember seeing her before she like left, and she was large. It was like her body weight was just
Times 3 of like little bodies?
Yeah. So no, I never got to talk to her, and I think I feel like most oncologists keep themselves at a distance from their patients and don't get like personal. So I never wanted to reach out to her personally.
Yeah.
But maybe one day, I don't know. I still talk to my hematologist, Dr. Holst. I think she lives in like Minnesota now or something. But I remember telling her and Dr. Pulowski that I finished. Then, they were super happy about it. I don't remember. I went on a tangent. I don't remember.
Sweet. Well, man, thanks for taking the time to share this stuff with us.
Yeah.
I know I speak for everyone in the gym, everyone you're friends with, like, super grateful that you're here with us. I'm glad you overcame all that shit. yeah, we could all learn a lot from what you went through.
I appreciate it, man. There's a lot of I don't say thank you enough, and I feel like I'm not outwardly appreciative enough of everyone that's in my life right now, because everyone that's in my life, regardless of if it's just over the last like 6 months or a year since I've been here, or if it started earlier, it's like everyone along the way has helped me more than I can express, just because of the like day-to-day things that I still deal with, like the weird side effects that are long term, or like, weightlifting saved my life then, and it still saved my life now. Like, it's just something that, is part of my life, and I'm super appreciative of everyone that's a good friend to me and that's there, and I try to be there for them. And people are important. Good people are rare. So, like, genuine good people are very important. I'm just super appreciative of everybody. Hopefully I make that known. I feel like I'm not good enough at it sometimes, but trying to be better.